Welcome to the remarkable rebirth of Hebrew. My name is Aliza Kleinman, and I'm the Director of Hebrew here at American Jewish University. At AJU, we are passionate about fostering a deep appreciation for Hebrew, not just as a language, but as a living, evolving, cultural cornerstone for the Jewish people. Today's program beautifully captures that spirit. First, I would like to express our gratitude to the donors who made this evening program possible. A special thank you to our sponsor, the Robin Stein Philanthropic Fund, and our co-sponsors, the Winkler Lowy Foundation and Alisa Wilson. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, RUVIK Rosenthal. RUVIK is a celebrated Israeli linguist, journalist, author, widely regarded as one of Israel's leading voices in study of Hebrew. RUVIK has written numerous books and articles about Hebrew language, focusing on its modern revival and its significance in shaping Israeli identity and culture. We are so fortunate to have him with us today to share his insights on the remarkable journey of Hebrew and its rebirth as a vibrant, living language. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming RUVIK Rosenthal.
In this lecture or meeting we have, we go to the basics and speak about Hebrew as a phenomenon. There is so much to tell about details, but today I prefer to deal with the general ideas and principles of Hebrew. What does it really mean, the story of Hebrew? Because Hebrew has a story. Like you know, a man have a biography. Hebrew has also a biography, an amazing one. So let's try and look what we have. So New Hebrew, modern Hebrew, if you want, is a unique phenomena in the history of languages. In general, every language have its path through ancient times, and it developed step by step, and combining literature and spoken language as a whole phenomena. It is not the story of Hebrew. The story of Hebrew is that for about 2,000 years, and I will be more accurate about it in a minute, it was used only or almost only for religious worship and studies, and not from everyday life. And why there is I have to say that it's more accurate to speak about 700 years from the Churban, you know, the Second Temple burning, and the expelling all the Jews from Israel. Until then, there was a speaking, living Hebrew community or communities in Israel. But last 1700, from the second decade to the 19th century, the Hebrew was in general and almost only dealt with religion, study, tradition, etc. And Jews always spoke in three languages. You know, thinking about the Jewish gene being, we are very clever, people think. I don't know if it's right, but I know that Jews all around these years had three languages. The language of the environment, you know, English in the United States, Russian in Russia, etc. The Jewish language, Yiddish, Ladino, etc. And Hebrew for religious study, worship, etc. And they didn't mix. And what happened in modern time was unique because when it happened to a language, and it happened to many languages, that it stopped to be a living language, even like Latin, it cannot be revived as a living language, the language of everybody, living society, and it keeps itself in in literature, etc. But in Hebrew, the Hebrew story is that it was in the last at least 150 years revived as a living language in the modern world, and this is the only example to such development. So what enabled an ancient language to serve the needs of living modern society? These are questions I will refer to in my lecture. How did Hebrew change and develop along 140 or 150 years of Zionist project and the state of Israel? What does a rich Israeli slang tell us? We speak about slang because it's part of language. And in my work, I deal mostly in social linguistics, in the connection between language and society. And slang is, of course, in the middle of this. So let's try to answer these questions. First of all, the leading factor is the amazing ability of the Jews to preserve their culture and religion, which is also a special phenomenon. So many religious societies, cultures disappeared from the earth, couldn't maintain a long existence. The Jews could do it for many reasons. I'm a secular person, so I don't believe it's coming from the Shekhinah, but it's legitimate to think it. But the point is that if you speak about Christianity has a vast audience, a vast community that maintained it. Jews was always a minority, small minorities, all over, scattered all over the world. So it make it more special. Of course, the answer to the secret is the Bible. Because as the Bible was sacred, became sacred, it was the basic of the Jewish life, the Jewish culture and Jewish beliefs. And Jews are, I say always to my fellow friends in Israel, we Jews are made of words. If the Bible was not such an important and preserved book, we wouldn't exist. This is what maintained us to learn it and to continue to interpret it through the Mishnah and the Talmud and all what came later. So I used to say, we say about the Shabbat that more than the Jews preserved Shabbat, Shabbat preserved the Jews because it was so strong in their culture. I can say the same about language, about Hebrew language. The language is the main pillar of our existence, of our history, of the way we could go from generation to generation, and then also declare the modern Hebrew, and it couldn't do without this preservation of the secular Hebrew. We could not, of the worship Hebrew, we couldn't maintain the secular Hebrew. So let's see. Now, Hebrew language is based on layers. It's like geology or other sciences. And there are 4 layers. We are speaking about 4 layers. The first layer is the language of the Bible, which means all of the linguistic aspects of the Bible, the lexicon, syntax, morphology, everything. I don't know how many of you are aware of linguistic terms, but everything that we have today in the modern Hebrew is based on the Bible. Though the Bible is quite hard to most of the Israeli, it's literature. But still, one of my books, I think you can see it now, yes? It's called Speaking in the Language of the Bible, and it means that we modern people speaking the same language. It may have many changes, but if you take the biblical Hebrew from from Hebrew, nothing is left. So Hebrew is the language of the Talmudic wisdom, the second layer. About 200 before Christ and until 800 after, which dealt with everyday Jewish life and interpreting and understanding all the rules of Hebrew, etc. Hebrew is the language of the great Jewish medieval philosophers, poets, etc. It's a long period, maybe until today, even if we speak about worship language. We have the Rambam and Rashi and Yehuda Halevi in Europe, Spain or France, etc. And what you can see here, that literature of the Jewish literature, the Jewish literature connected with worship, study, religion, is a huge project. Hundreds of thousands of books were written along those years, those 2,000 years. It's so you can say Hebrew was alive in the books, but it was alive and kicking. That's how we say it. Now the fourth one is you can say the promotion for modern Hebrew is the language of the Enlightenment. In Hebrew, we call it Haskalah, as you may know, and it combines Jewish identity with European movements of secularism and nationalism. Now we go to something that already connect with European culture, with the culture of the environment. The Enlightenment idea was we stay Jews, we stay in Hebrew, but we are not detached from the world and the culture around us. It happened again before it in Spain, in the what you call the Golden Age, but here it was and the ideology, and it's so. In the 18th century, the movement of secularism, nationalism, enlightenment, all these affected the Jews, and what came out of it was a Zionist movement. The Zionist movement is the frame of modern Hebrew, because modern Hebrew has to serve the Zionist movement. It has to give it a language that will connect all the Jews, and Zionism in the beginning was the idea of that the people of the Bible are coming to the land of the Bible. And Ben Yehuda, which we meet now, said, no, there is a triple. The people of the Bible are coming to the land of the Bible and speak the language of the Bible. So a small group of young Zionists created the infrastructure, sorry for the long word, for the new Hebrew. I don't call it a layer because it's happening till now. But they understood and they claimed, and of course Ben Yehuda was the leader, but he was not alone at all, that the revival of the language was an essential element of national revival. Most of many of the Zionist leaders didn't know Hebrew. They didn't study it. They didn't speak Hebrew. They spoke Yiddish. They spoke German. Herzl was a German journalist. So it was strange in the beginning. And it took time until the Zionist leaders understood there is no other choice. That's the only solution for the question of the language. So I just have a quote here from Ben Yehuda. Hebrew didn't die because it had lost its power. It died with the nation, and it will rise again with the nation. He wrote it when he was 23 years old. And a young Zionist, enthusiastic Zionist. But we now all agree that, and I said it again and again, Hebrew never died. But so the revolution of Ben Yehuda and his friends was not making back from the dead, but a renaissance, making a language that serve all the needs of modern society. And this is much more than a revolution of just let's speak Hebrew, let's renew Hebrew language. It needs some steps of combining, and I see or recombine. I see Ben Yehuda's greatness because he combined so many aspects of Hebrew that was separated. For example, the sacred language and the secular language. Because sacred language, Lashon HaKodesh, that was the name. Now, the idea of Lashon HaKodesh is a Talmudic idea. And they said, that understood that if they will not make Hebrew sacred, it will disappear because everybody will speak Hebrew and it will lose its sacred power. And it was a very important decision. So he combined it back. You know, in the time of the Bible and of the Mishnah, it was combined. It was books, religion, and everyday life. So he brought it again. And he make a very strong step to combine spoken language with written language. Now, we speak about written language, not just we write the language, but written language preserve the exact grammar, preserve the nice way how we use the language. While, as you know, everywhere, spoken language is much more fluent, much more free. And some people can say that spoken language, the speakers may make the language spoil the language, which is, of course, nonsense. Speaking is the living of the life of the language. But it was separated, and he combined it again. And this is only some of his combining, and you know, we can speak only about Ben Yehuda now 2 hours, which we don't have. So don't be afraid. One of the problems was words, lexicon. You know, language is morphology, grammar, it's syntax, and it's words, the lexicon. Now, I don't know how many words are in English today because nobody knows. It can be close to a million. I don't know. I read many things about people stopped counting. But also we can see Arabic, literature, Arabic, the Fusha, have 500,000 words. It's very rich. All these big languages like French, German, Russian have 300,000 words, give or take. And Ben Yehuda and his friends began their way with, it's unbelievable, 25,000 words, from whose only 8,000 came from the Bible. And I said before that the Bible is a basic also of the lexicon. I don't come into it. There is a reason for it. The most important words and everyday words are in the Bible, but still it's a very small numbers of words. What can we do? So what they began to do is to invent new Hebrew, neologisms, as we call it, new words, and they did it not in the natural evolutionary way of words come from many various sources and come into the language. No, they have to invent. They have to sit. Ben Yehuda and his friends sat on the desk and invented words. And some of the friends was very criticized it very much because said, how can you just invent a word? But Ben Yehuda says in some of his articles and speeches, what can we do? We don't have words. We don't have time. We have to do it artificially. Yes, artificially. They call him the fabricant. He's fabricated words. He and his friend. I just tell me, and there were bitter dispute about many words. What is the right word? Ben Yehuda renewed about 200 words, Bialik about 300, and, and they argued a lot. I just give you the tomato story. Tomato, potato, yes? No. How will it call it in Hebrew? Now, there were three ideas or suggestions. One was of Ben Yehuda. He says, let's call tomato Badura. Badura, very strange word and not very pleasant to the ear. It's coming from Arabic because he tried to use Arabic because he said Arabic and Hebrew are like not even more than cousins, even sisters. And in Arabic they say bandura, which comes from Italian. Nobody liked this word. Some author suggested tamma. It's like tomato, you know. It's a whole. It's so innocent and so. But then came an ultra-Orthodox friend of Ben Yehuda, Pines, Yechiel Michal Pines, and he had an idea to call it Agvaniya. Agvaniya is coming from roots. You know, Hebrew is a language of roots and patterns. And said Agvaniya from the root of agav, la'agov, to make love, because it's a sexy fruit, this tomato. It's a fruit, by the way, not only vegetable. And it was, everybody fell in love with this word, so it won. And there are many other stories which we can also speak the whole evening, but we have to continue. Now, how did it happen that we call this between 1880 to 1920, we call it Tchiyat HaLashon. In English, the revival of Hebrew. Because it was the time of the revival, of the beginning of the project. And it came to reality in the beginning of the 20th century by the second Aliyah. Not so big, but very elite Aliyah. And they established schools, and they had important writers and newspapers. And they took upon their shoulders to continue to teach the children Hebrew. And the children in Israel was always, until today, are you can call it the engine of Hebrew. Because the parents who came from many languages, many diasporas, had many problems with Hebrew. Most of them, my father, came from Germany. And he never studied a word in Hebrew, though he lived here about 15 years until he died young, unfortunately. But it tells a much larger story. But the children, when I came out from my house, when I heard only German, I met children from Polish houses, from Slavic, Russian, etc., Romanian, and we spoke Hebrew. And we are the secret of how Hebrew succeeded. I just give here some quotes of Chad philosopher, of Zionist philosopher, that when he came in 1893, he spoke about the stuttering Hebrew of both teachers and pupils. They don't know Hebrew, they're trying, but I don't think it's worked. 20 years later, he came and he said, a Hebrew education in Hebrew, education in Hebrew, teaching Hebrew in Hebrew in Eretz Israel is no longer the ideal, but life itself, a common sight, a necessary reality. Now, in 1956, a linguist, also from Germany, of course, Israeli one, Chaim Rosen, wrote a book, Our Hebrew, and he said something revolutionary, as we don't have enough revolutions in Hebrew. He said, I listened to how the Jews, the people in Israel, the children and the parents speak, and there are so many gaps between the right, nice, and accurate Hebrew and the way people speak. Now, it happens everywhere, but until he said it, nobody paid attention. We taught the right Hebrew and we studied it, and that's it. And this idea of Israeli Hebrew, this was his coinage, is a dynamic phenomenon, challenging the purity of modern Hebrew in various aspects. And now most of the linguists using this term because it tells the dynamic story of Hebrew. It's not, static. It's dynamic. My next book, which will be in, I hope, a year or some, is exactly about what does it mean Israeli Hebrew, and where is this gap and tension, fruitful tension between the Israeli, between modern Hebrew as an idea and Israeli Hebrew as a reality. Now about slang, we don't have enough time, unfortunately, for slang. Slang is a strange linguistic creation. On the one hand, it is, everywhere. I have in my library about 3 or 4 slang lexicons, American slang language lexicon, and a huge British. So everyone has, the more language is wide and developing, it have a larger slang. It sounds like a paradox, but that's what it is. So on the one hand, it is vulgar, improper, thinking about taboo like sex, etc., and a sign of bad manners. On the other hand, people love slang. It's humorous, it's popular, it's highly expressive, and it is intimate. So when people ask me what is slang, because it's very hard to define, the answer is slang is social and psychological. It have to answer social and psychological needs of common people to be more free, more intimate, to raise a language of their own friends, sometimes their own profession, etc. So I published 15 years ago a huge slang dictionary, and I think it's a very important part of the language. It's very dynamic. It's, every generation have its slang, and they grow with the slang, and the generation after have a new slang. But some are more stable. So now, Israeli slang is a multilingual phenomenon. It draws on a relatively large number of foreign languages which have reached Hebrew by various routes. In general, Hebrew, all along the years, was affected and absorbed so many languages And I think it's part of its success because it became richer. We have 4,000 words only from ancient Greek. Can you imagine? Or Aramaic, or etc. So the same with slang, but slang is a young phenomenon, of course, only in Israel. So its main source are three languages: Palestinians, Arabic, Yiddish, and American English. So in the few moments we have, I just say some things about it, and I will be happy to get your question. So I think Palestinian Hebrew is, I call it the queen of Israeli slang. And it was influenced by the meeting, very close meeting, connection, relations between the Jews, the young Jews in Israel, young Israelis, with the Arabs lives in Israel. Today, we can say that there is kind of a wall, unfortunately, between Jews and Arabs in Israel. But before 48, it was not the story. There were enemies, but also friends. So the young generation heard these words in Arabic and loved it because it was strong. It was not like the Yiddish of the parents. For example, dachilak, which means please. Now, dachilak is strong. Please, it's not so strong. Voila, when you are surprised. Yalla, you want to urge somebody to get going. And the king of these years, Sababa, I believe you heard about this word that expressed everything is fine, okay, good feelings. And it's also from Arabic. In literature, Arabic, it means longing for your lover. Global English burst into the Hebrew seen through technology. You know, Arabic, we meet Arabs. Yiddish, people came with it from their, homes and communities in Europe. Global English, it's not by meeting people, but technology, mass media, music, television, computers, and the internet. And there are so many things to tell about. It's from the 70s. It became very important in Israeli jargon, slang, and many other aspects of the language. So it leads me to end our story. First of all, what is also important, we spoke about combining. Everybody speaks Israeli Hebrew. Ultra-Orthodox, they don't speak Yiddish. They speak maybe some extreme groups. They speak modern Hebrew. Most of the Arabs, of course, the more educated, speak very good Hebrew. And they have a very special phenomenon of hybrid language, combining Hebrew and Arabic. But the lovers or devotees of Hebrew are all concerned about the undeniable daily phenomenon of the rapid increase in the use of foreign words, especially English. Like all along the world, everybody is afraid from American English, which we call global English. Should we worry about it? Worry about it? Personally, I don't think we have to be worried, but I know people are speaking about their songs and articles said, stop it, stop it. We can't stop it. We're part of the world. But Hebrew is, in my opinion, strong enough to continue as long as the state of Israel will exist. I don't know, say it won't exist. It's, hypothetical. If something happens, Hebrew will come back to literature, to worship, to the praise, and all this big thing will disappear. They are combining together the state of Israel and the Hebrew language. So I will stop the share now, and let's see if you have question. I see 17. Wow. Okay. Dan Wolfeiler, do you or your colleagues exchange information with Catalans who also have experienced the renovation of the language as well? Have you learned or have they learned any lessons from such an exchange? Well, I must say I didn't meet such meet it. The Welsh are trying to renew the language. In Spain, the Basque are trying. They still have, it's always marginal to a very much stronger and central language. But these experiences are, as Hebrew, you combine national identity and movements with language, as we did. But in Israel, Hebrew is the main language. It's not part of something wider. Bet even, yes. From my limited Talmud study, the language is Aramaic and the only Hebrew is quotes from the Tanakh. Could you explain further the understanding that Hebrew is the language of Talmudic wisdom? Good question. Yes and no. First of all, I have to explain it. In Israel, there were two dialects. The Judaic in the center of Israel, and the northern, in the north dialect, mostly the north. And the Norse dialect didn't come into the Bible because it was political. Jerusalem is the heart and the temple is the heart where the Bible is written. Now, after the Bible, the Jews went to diaspora in Babylon about 500 before Christ. The Judaic language stopped to be a living language. And the northern one became to be the living language everywhere. And they also studied and wrote in this language, and this is the language of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is all around Hebrew. It's a great book. I love it more than Talmud because of this Aramaic, which is now in Babylon. They spoke Aramaic everyday life, and they combined the Hebrew language, but the characteristics of the Mishnaic northern language stayed as a basic of what we call Lashon Chazal, of the language of the Talmud. So you can say it's Hebrew, but when you take the literature, you see a hybrid. Sometimes it's not only Tanakh, it's absolutely mixed. Arabic, Hebrew, and Aramaic. And also Greek, especially in the Mishnaic. Why did they change the S sound for the T sound? Good question. There were two, you have great questions. You have two traditions, main tradition, Ashkenazi and Sephardi. Now, they were very much, they were different. And of course, in Europe, in especially Germany and France, etc., they had the Ashkenazi, and of course, Eastern Europe. So they spoke the Ashkenazi way, but the decision led by Ben Yehuda and his friend was, in Israel, we speak the Sephardi tradition, not the Ashkenazi. So, for example, it's not only S&T. Let's take this important word, Shabbat. Yes? Shabbat. Shabbat is in the Sephardi way. Shabbos is in the Ashkenazi way, because the T was like the difference between Fe and Pe. Also, it was between T and Se. But as we spoke in Hebrew, in Sephardic tradition, it was banned. So Shabbos is only Ashkenazi way, and some ultra-Orthodox shout it when they don't like people are driving in Shabbos. Howard, what is date for creation of Hebrew Bible? Was there a predecessor Torah? Well, the beginning of the writing and creating the Bible is about 1000 before Christ. But of course, it was based on many stories and legends and myths that the Hebrew people had before it. More than that, even there are some poetry, very strong poetry in the Bible. And Moses poetry, Deborah poetry, these are oral before the Bible began to be written, and they took it into as is into the Bible, so you can see many characteristics that are not characterizing the biblical language, but nobody knows when it began, Hebrew. But we can assume that it's about 1500 before Christ. So we are 3,500 years old, quite old. Rosalie Shoshana, would you call the Hebrew taught in the diaspora modern Hebrew or Hebrew of the diaspora? Well, it depends when. In the Enlightenment, along the 19th century, we see it as a beginning of modern Hebrew. It had many problems how to write the elect word, but it was a beginning. Before it was only language of religion. Gali Ruder, isn't the English language also different in each country speaking English? There is American English, British English, South African, and then with each country there are different ways, I believe, of speaking. Of course, well, we are not speaking about English now, but I can say that English is spread all along the world, and while you spread a language, it begin to change. I don't want to be insulting, but the British thinks that American English is an imposter. That it's not the language, something else. Okay, but so it changed from place to place, and it also have dialects inside the language. Not so much in Israel. I didn't come to it, but in Israel, it's not a very wide phenomenon, a dialect, because we are a small country. But in Italian, dialects live until today. So not only between countries, but within the country, there are some variants of language. Amalia's iPad. In slang, it is mostly creamy. In the Israeli military, what do you mean creamy? I don't know. Well, I can tell you, uh, I can tell you that my PhD work is about the language of the army, Israeli army, and it's the only big research about these important topics. There are so many things to speak about, and of course, the military language is not only slang; it's all over. It's an independent, almost though it's Hebrew, yes, but it's almost independent, and the slang of the army is also very interesting. But this is something we can. This is a book I published. It's called "Speaking Army Language." מדברים צהלית. צהלית, that's the name we gave it. And it's a huge story and a good question, but unfortunately I cannot speak about it enough time. We are, we're tasting. Would a speaker, Donna Lee, would a speaker biblical Hebrew be able to understand a speaker of modern Hebrew? And vice versa? Besides the slang, of course, how different are they? We don't know, because all we have from the Bible is written, and we don't know exactly how they pronounce the vowels and the consonants. For years, until the 10th century after Christ, there are many ways to read even the Bible. So the Tiberian system gave it a punctuation. And so we now know how to read it. But you see, we also today we have Shabbos and Shabbat. So let's think, how did they speak 3,000 years ago? We don't know exactly. We can have some guesses, but it's very hard to answer something serious about this question, which is a very good one. What is the opinion of the Academy of the Hebrew Language about the use of slang in the spoken Hebrew? No problem. Academy doesn't deal with slang. It's not a mission. But now, last 10, 20 years, they are very much connected with the public. So they have Twitters and Facebook, and they deal also with slang. Well, I tell you that if somebody is interested, I have a very rich website. It's called the Language Arena. In Hebrew, Hazira Haleshonit. And I write about everything connected with Hebrew, a new article each week. And also dozens of questions each week people send me. Sometimes the academy sends me, because we're working in the same field, a question about slang, they say, let's send it to RUVIK. But they are not against slang, not at all. And today, linguists are not trying to teach people how to speak. They are trying to tell the interesting thing about Hebrew as a whole, but not teaching people. It was in the past, it was different. Billy Miller, the Hebrew word for please, בבקשה, does it come from בקש, to seek? לבקש is to seek, אבקש את אני מחפש, and also, of course, I seek for your answer. אני מבקש את your answer or your courtesy Of course, it's the same root, absolutely. How much influence did Ladino have on the don't know what is C? Well, Ladino, I love Ladino. It has some influence on slang and some influence on phrases and idioms, but it's diminished. It's going down because today there is a big work of reviving, not by speaking, but by books and also by music and food, reviving old Jewish languages, like Ladino, like Yiddish also, like Moroccan, Hebrew, etc. But it's not going to come back to life. Ellen Harris, how does the Hebrew vocabulary and grammar and syntax of the Torah and Biblical Hebrew, Nach the Mishnah, and Rabbinic Hebrew and Ivrit, etc., differ from each other? How did Talmudic or Onkelos Aramaic influence ancient Hebrew? I love this question, but I'm not going to answer it because it will take us all night. It's very wise. The differences between the Bible and Lashon HaKodesh is not only the Bible, it's also rabbinic, they call it. Everything that connected with worship, praise, etc. Difference between the biblical and the Talmudic, rabbinic, is very wide. And what also Ben Yehuda and friend combined was the Mishnaic rabbinic language with the biblical language. Because when Ben Yehuda wrote to some linguists in Europe, tell them they want to revive Hebrew, they said, you can't do it, it's two languages. And it was combining very quick and without, you don't know now, if you're not a linguist, what come from the Bible and what come from the Mishnah. And this is one of the secrets why it did succeed. My understanding that the headlights were named sealed beams. See, well, it's a joke. They call it seal beam. But seal beam, it's kind of Hebrew way to play with English words and twist it a little. It's very funny. How did Greek and Arabic influence Hebrew? Wow. Greek, mostly during the Mishnah days, as I told you, 4,000 words. Not so much on grammar. Grammar is absolutely Semitic, but on the lexicon, a lot. And it is very important influence. Arabic only began to really influence in Spain in the Golden Era, and the influence was great, words and patterns, etc. And Ben Yehuda wanted to take all the roots in Arabic and absorb it into English, into Hebrew, sorry. And it was not accepted, but he said, we are sisters. I want more. But he renewed many questions, many words from Arabic. And of course, the Israeli slang, as I said, is very much influenced by the Arabic.
Thank you, Ruvik, for such a fascinating and inspiring talk. Before we conclude, I'd like to remind everyone that if today's discussion sparked your interest in deepening your knowledge of Hebrew, we offer a variety of Hebrew courses here at American Jewish University. Whether you are a beginner or looking to enhance your fluency, we have something for everyone. You can find more details about our upcoming Hebrew classes by visiting our website, and we have included a link in the chat for easy access. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And thank
Just
you.
give me a small answer to the. It will be very small answer, short, because it's important. I have heard that some consider Israeli Hebrew as no longer a Semitic language. What do you think? The answer is bullshit. It's absolutely a Semitic language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruvik, for clarifying this. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And thank you again to our sponsor, the Robin Stife Philanthropic Fund, and co-sponsors, the Winkley Lowy Foundation and Alisa Wilson. We hope to see you at future events and in our Hebrew classes. Lehitraot.